Erdem, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
I can hear.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Brian, John, can you hear Erdem?
Yes, I can.
Hold on, we need to do a sound check.
No problem.
One.
Where's Matilla's new microphone? Matilla's new
I want to hear
microphone.
Matsala. What does it sound like?
Connected. It's not
Oh my
connected.
God. Matsala, I get you a $150 microphone. Or you couldn't find the connection.
Yeah, the connection is the problem.
Okay, all right. Kevin, we don't see you. Where are you?
I don't have cam on my desktop.
That's fine. That's fine.
I have a better mic though.
All right. So I wanted to welcome Erdem, Dr. Erdem Aktung, who is well, he was, you know, like you at one point. He's a graduate of the program, and I thought it makes sense for us to. And he's probably the most senior person that we've heard so far. He's also a member of our Investment Advisory Council. So he advises us in terms of, you know, what's going on out there, where we should be going with the program, especially in this environment. And I thought it would make sense for him to tell you a little bit about, you know, his studies at Lehigh, you know, why he got a PhD, and how he got his first job and what he does, and then answers questions from you, right? Because I want you to get different aspects as to what are the possibilities and really what's going on in the market right now. So Erdem,
Yep.
Floor is yours.
Yep, sounds good. Hi everybody, and good to see all of you. I know these look like a little bit tough times, but I think you have some light at the end of the tunnel, and things, the stock market, I would say overall came back to where it was before COVID. So I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be optimistic, especially compared to when I graduated in 2008-9 period, when everything was collapsing, and it took me about 2 years to find my full-time job actually. So let me talk about my background a little bit. So I'm originally from Turkey, did my undergraduate in Istanbul, and came directly to Lehigh to do PhD in econ. A reason for choosing PhD was just I didn't have any money, and I couldn't get any student loan from Turkey in the US, right? So this was like for me, I wanted to do either master's or PhD, and PhD you don't have to actually spend any money on that, right? You just give some of your services, and so this basically this one of the reasons was, you know, that I didn't have the financial sources, but I also was interested in, you know, always I wanted to do graduate studies at the quant level. So I was already interested in doing some either PhD or quantitative, some masters in quantitative discipline. So that was the reason I chose to do PhD at Lehigh. What can I tell you? I was also, while I was doing my PhD, I was also thinking that after 2 years, I can get my master's and, you know, take off to an industry job. So at the end of my actually second year in PhD, I also interviewed with some companies. But looking back, I think if you are doing PhD, it's not a very good idea to cut it in the middle. I would say try to finish it and you will have more opportunities. So if I probably did masters and leave after 2 years, I would be in a much worse shape, because PhD gives you more options. Basically, you can do any industry job. If you did good research in your PhD, you can find a lot of industry jobs, as well as you can also find teaching jobs. So what I can tell also about my PhD, I did research with Professor Nayar, Nandu Nayar, and Geraldo Vasconcelos. Professor Vasconcelos, he passed away in 2015. So I did mostly in the area of sovereign risk. During my studies, I would say what are important classes I still use: statistics, econometrics, any class with programming, obviously finance classes, financial calculus classes where you think about an option pricing, all of this. And also Professor Dobrich, one of the founders of the quantitative finance program, he also passed away. So I also learned a lot from him, especially complicated stuff. Sometimes you use this to price exotic products, and it's very difficult. It gets very quantitative, and the firms need that. For example, product like swaption. It's hard to price this product, and a lot of big banks use it. It's hard to price and hard to measure the risk of it, right? If a big bank like Goldman or JP has a lot of these positions, swaptions, they want to also measure the risk of these positions. What is 95% confidence interval? How much can I lose in a worst case scenario? So these type of things are important in financial calculus. So I would say, yep, definitely if you are interviewing, review your statistics 101, econometrics 101, financial calculus if you took this class 101, optimization. I took some IE classes. They are also still very helpful. Optimization, this type of things. So I would, if somebody asks you about binomial distribution or linear regression, in credit risk, we use a lot of logistic regression, right? A lot of these things you should be able to, I would say, answer. So these are I spent about maybe 6 years at Lehigh. At the end of 4 years, I was done with my PhD, but because it was 2008-9 period, I sticked around for another 2 years. I did a little bit more research papers. I did some teaching. I taught at Lehigh classes like statistical methods, money and banking, introduction to economics, and as well as Moravian. I taught at Moravian, Kutztown, around Lehigh area. So about for 2 years, I was basically, because the job market was bad, I found some visiting positions in the area. And during my job hunt, I would say 2009-2010 period was very bad. So I also, it's also a stressful period. It was also a stressful period because I also didn't have US visa. I had to go back to Turkey. So I actually almost was going back, but at the end, I found an academic job, basically a full-time professor job. But during this time, job hunt, I know it's stressful. I would say 2 things that I would advise is you will always hunt for positions. You will apply, you can apply constantly using company websites or LinkedIn or any other headhunters. But I would say also have something on the side going on. So from these interviews, you can learn a lot, right? They ask you some questions and you don't know the answer. So you learn from each interview what type of questions you will get. You can do research online, what type of questions you will get, right? And also during these 2 years, I also got FRM degree. So it's on the side. I was, also learning stuff by myself. If you are finding yourself a little bit stressed about the job hunt, try to on the side do some brain exercise, right? So if you can review all of these interview questions or your introduction stats classes, but best way to put it into practice is to test yourself constantly. So I decided to study for FRM. It took me about 1 year to get this certification, but it was also good brain exercise. That was my PhD years and the job hunt period. So I would say, yep, definitely you have to attack. It's the way I found my first job was just I was applying a lot. I had actually during my PhD I had an internship at the end of my second year at Fitch Ratings. So it introduced me some of the credit risk world, rating models, these type of things. So this was definitely helpful in getting a lot of interviews. But how I get the job was just, or a lot of the interviews, I think I was close. It's just you have to try and try constantly. And sometimes you find a good match, basically. I would say I found my first job as an assistant professor of finance in Stockton College. Basically, this was close to Atlantic City. So I was there about 4 years, but they needed a finance professor. I mean, even though I had PhD in economics, it's hard a little bit to find finance position. They needed somebody who can understand finance. So we were a good match with them. And this school helped me to get my green card, all of this stuff. And I did a lot of, I was able to find a lot of time to do research. So even though I was more interested in industry positions, this position gave me some time to improve my research, my programming skills, do some publications. So I think it's a process where you are gonna get, you want to get to some point, but you will over time understand what you have to get to that point. Maybe your first job is not gonna be with a super prestigious bank, but even if you get some job in asset management or risk area, right, or investment banking, this will give you, even if it's not a great company, this will give you 1 or 2 years of understanding of industry and what you have to do to get to a bigger bank or a more prestigious consulting firm. So I think it's a process, and if you know where you want to go, you will just learn this over time, and when the time is right, you will, I think, get your dream job if you work for it. So
what are you doing? So now at UBS, maybe we get a feel for
so
what
then,
you're doing.
after my academic years at Stockton, I found a job at the New York Fed. So because I did research on sovereign risk area and I have the FRM certification, I had a good idea about credit risk regulation, or it can be generally Dodd-Frank Act, where the Fed had a lot of regulation over the banks, right? Operational risk area now, or market risk area. I was more interested in credit risk area, where you estimate like ratings or probability of default. So I was at the Fed about more than 3 years after my first academic job. This was more like an industry, semi-industry job, where I was doing a lot of bank examination, participate in CCAR, stress testing exercise, or model risk exams. So we basically were going into different banks and auditing their models, right? Examining whether their models are good or any shortcomings, which would lead to lower capital requirement, right? So if they are keeping low capital, they are carrying high risk, then it's a problem. So a lot of the models were being checked by the Fed because of the regulations after the mortgage crisis. So after Fed, I joined UBS about 2 years ago. And from more validation side or audit side, I moved into more development side, or other side of the table, where we are developing the models. So currently what I do is I have a team of developers and using data, external data or internal data, we try to develop rating models. It can be corporate rating in the corporate world mostly. When you think of credit risk, this is related to credit risk. We build probability of default model, basically PD model, where you ideally you will have defaults and non-defaults, and you try to model this 1-0 framework, right? Binomial framework with some factors, right? You can think of FICO score. This is in the retail side, right? They create your FICO score depending on some factors, whether you are more likely default or not, right? In the case of corporate world, you don't have FICO score, but you have ratings. And these ratings mostly depend on leverage, liquidity, how much the debt the company has, how much liquidity they have, profitability, right, management quality, these type of factors. Using these factors, we try to model probability of default, mostly using logistic modeling. Basically, yep, that's what I do, develop rating models. I can say I develop, for example, a municipal rating model where we rate different municipalities, like it can be city, a city is doing a new project, right? If at Lehigh, they are building a new bridge and the municipality needs some financing for that, right? Or if Seattle, there is a port they are building, they need financing for that. So the banks want to lend to these different corporate clients, and we basically come up with a rating model. Yeah.
But to be very specific, how did you get that job at UBS from the Fed? How did you manage that?
Actually, Fed is basically having a job at the Fed was a very good. I was all very good thing because I was able to see all the banking system through bank exams. So I would go to all the big banks you can think about and look at all of their models, right? So I know what every bank is doing while I was at the Fed. I knew the insight of most of the banks, how they model these corporate PDs, right? How do they rate hedge fund? How do they rate CRE, real estate firms? How do they rate mutual funds, private equity? So I had a good insight about the whole banks and how do their risk framework. So UBS actually contacted me, headhunters contacted me from I think Atlas Search. Headhunters were constantly contacting me. And at the Fed, I was feeling like I was doing too much of a validation role, more review, rather than develop something. I felt like I wanted to more be on the creative side. And Fed is a little bit, it was sometimes things were a little bit slow, and I wanted a more fast-paced environment. So the way I got the job was basically headhunter contacted me, and I was interested. It looked like a good position, development position. But of course, they asked me questions. It wasn't just easily I got it. They asked me a lot of questions: binomial distribution, how you model probability of default, simple statistics questions, linear regression, how do you determine whether a variable is significant or not, assumptions of linear regression, what are main assumptions, if you have some problem, how do you solve these issues. So that's how I would get. And of course, they were using R, and this was also one of the main requirements, right? They asked me if I knew R, and even if I had a little experience with R at the time, I quickly improved over time. So R, first I learned SAS at Lehigh, and then I used Stata, and now mostly I'm using R. So you should probably be comfortable with one of the languages at the beginning, merging data sets, doing regression, or manipulating the data if you have missing observations, these type of things. You should basically, this is the one of the first requirements, right? They want you to be well with statistics, econometrics, finance, but also the starting point is you have to know programming language. Right? So this was, I think, one of the requirements. The job I got at the Fed was also, they were asking me, do you know any programming languages? Have you worked with large data sets? Right? Because I did PhD, I had some research papers and a lot of interviews. I actually got this question: what program do you use? How do you merge two data sets? Right? Did you work with a big data set? How big was the data set? I got this type of questions a lot in interviews. So working with large data sets and having programming skills, I think, is the starting point. And then they will ask you more econometrics, finance, statistics questions. And it's really, you have to try. Sometimes it's just even you are better than other candidates. Maybe you are overqualified, right? So you don't know, maybe companies sometimes decide who they want to hire. You are just another candidate for procedural reasons. So you just do your best, and at the end you find a good match. They need a person like you.
So basically, because we had Dennis from JP Morgan yesterday,
Yeah.
which is also a risk management position. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm telling the student basically that risk management right now is a good way to use your skills. You also mentioned in passing the FRM,
Yeah.
right? Did you take it after the degree, because we prepare for the FRM very well in the program. Did you take it after the program or?
After the program, yeah.
Okay.
Because after the I finished with the program, I finished most of my PhD. I was doing some research and some teaching at Lehigh at the time, but I also had a lot of free time. Right, I was teaching, I think, one class, and I was trying to publish 1 or 2 articles. But on the side, yeah, it took me a year. But this was, yeah, you have to spend a good amount of time for this.
For the FRM.
If you are
Any
taking classes, yeah.
Any questions for them? Mike?
Yeah, I have a question. So based on your knowledge of just like the financial industry as a whole,
Yeah.
I feel like certifications are becoming more and more relevant in today's world. So would you say there's one exam that kind of stands out above the rest in terms of getting certified? Because like, for example, I plan on taking the CFA in February of this year. So do you think there's a specific exam that's just kind of like better for furthering your career than others?
Yep, I mean, I took my FRM 10 years ago, so it was 2011. So things probably might have changed over time, but I hear a lot about CFA and FRM. FRM would be more quantitative if you are looking for risk positions, basically, right? That would be a good, not only, I mean, they won't just say that, okay, he has FRM, we will hire him, but just having FRM will give you, more practice, right? If they ask you some questions, or you will have more knowledge in general, right? But if you take CFA, this is a little bit less quantitative, I would say. If you are not looking for like, let's say you are looking for equity analyst position or investment banking, right? This type of things, I think CFA is more relevant to that, or financial advisory. These type of things you will. I also thought about CFA. I was actually even gonna take this exam, but I think I needed my passport for this, and I didn't have my passport at the time, so I missed this exam. Because they don't, it's very strict requirement that you have to go there with, you cannot just go there with driving license to the exam. You have to go with the passport or US ID or something. So, but yeah, CFA, I would say, I looked at the questions of CFA, it's more related to more finance, right? It's, if you think about finance, investments, this type of classes, you will get questions like that in CFA. Whereas in FRM, you will get like martingale, Black and Scholes, what is delta hedging, these type of things. So FRM will be more quantitative compared to CFA. CFA will more be like, you will be a lot of, I think in CFA, not finance, but also a lot of ethical questions. I think there was a big section on ethics, big section on advisory, these type of things. It will be also a lot of like non-quantitative stuff in CFA. But yeah, in FRM you also have this stuff, but I felt like, yep, you should probably think about what you want to do. Right, you want to go into credit risk position, or you want to, or even in risk positions, you might have not very quantitative. Not all the risk positions are programming, right? A lot of risk positions can be like governance, policy. What is the new policy? Not all of the people in risk management world has to do programming, right? So sometimes it's just people management, project management. Right, you need some statistical knowledge, but I would say half of the people in the risk management world don't have to do any programming. Right, it's just a lot of a lot of project management and this type of things, or you are familiar with certain policy, right? It's like a lot of lawyers, for example, in the credit risk, in the risk world, right? Because they know the regulation, right? And you have to understand regulation well. Maybe you don't understand the quant parts, but other parts and how this affects the company, the bank. Yep. So CFA, FRM, both are good idea.
Any other questions?
Yes. My question is, would you recommend doing a PhD then?
PhD, it's a
For
tricky
someone,
question.
yeah, for someone who's interested maybe in a quantitative trading role or a heavily quantitative role. Because like I've been interviewing recently and most of their questions are very heavy towards the coding side that I think maybe a PhD helps you prepare for maybe. Well, what's your opinion? I don't know.
Yeah, I can tell you a lot of programs will ask for that. I can tell you I did now programming almost during my PhD, last years of my PhD, I did some programming. I wasn't very familiar starting the PhD. And at that time, people weren't doing too much programming, like engineers would do programming, but nobody really taught us any programming when we were at Lehigh too much. It was just one guy with SAS, and then during my research, some health economics professor showed me some stata code. But programming is like not that somebody will go and teach you. It is it's hard to tell, but you can take a lot of classes and you might not learn programming. Right, so you have to work together. Maybe somebody knows R very well or SAS very well, and he will help you through this. You need to find one person usually has to hold your hand, or you learn it by yourself. So it's not like you go on to PhD and they teach you programming. It's mostly you teach it with friends and yourself, basically. But yeah, definitely, if you have some friends who are doing some coding, you can ask them, how do you work with a data set, right? If you have a data set, how do you do regression with this data set, right? How do you, do logistic regression if you have some data set, right? Try to work with some data sets to learn programming, and it grows over time, right? First, you have a little knowledge of it. Once you open this door, over time, you kind of improve as you do more exercise. Yeah, PhD, your question to do PhD, I think you should apply to all different things, right? You apply to industry job, you apply to PhD program, and then whatever is the best option, right? You will make, if you don't get anything in industry, maybe you'll get a PhD position, and this can help you for financially or gain some time, right? And if you don't like PhD, you can always quit, right? But I would say after you start PhD, try to finish this in 3-4 years. Don't lose too much time. With PhD, I would say you would have similar positions, but try to go into like Ivy League, a school better than Lehigh that will that might give you better opportunities, right? You want to, let's say, I know a lot of my friends, some people went to Duke, some people I think went to Columbia, right? If you can get into these schools in terms of PhD, this will give you a better perspective or more chances. If you do PhD at Lehigh, I don't know if that will improve you too much.
But I mean, having said that,
but yeah, I might be wrong.
no, I don't know. But one thing I do know is I think students tend to, and you could see the question, should I get the CFA? Should I get a PhD? I think the idea that degrees somehow, and that's a dilemma, right? What is it that people are going to be looking for? You yourself? Maybe if you have the right connection, you don't need a PhD.
Yeah, if you can. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you have the right connection and if you find a good position in industry, you don't need anything, right? This is I think first goal is to find a job in industry, equity analyst, risk analyst, this type of things. First, I think target is to find that, right? All other things are secondary, right? Because you are looking for a job, you couldn't find a job, then of course, what are you gonna do? You and no classes left, right? You took all the classes. If you have free time, of course, try to also consider CFA, FRM, just to give you more brain exercise.
That I think I would agree with strategy like that. You got the job, you're in it, you're networking, and then you get the CFA. But the idea of let me get all these pieces of paper ahead, and then let me look, because I heard at some position you could price yourself, not price, but if they see a PhD right on it, they'll say, "Whoa, this guy's overqualified."
Yeah.
So
PhD,
you
even
really
a lot
need to
of
know your
teaching
market.
positions. Yeah, you might be overqualified. There's a lot of, it's going to be a lot of academic. I think most of you are quant, right? Financial engineering. So your
They're all in the
first
same
goal,
class,
first goal should be always find a job in industry, because even if you are going to do PhD in the future, this will give you an idea about industry, what people are doing, right? If you can work for some not a very good firm for 1 year, but that it will give you what people are doing, what are equity analysts, risk analysts. So your first goal should always be, shooting for these positions, right? Industry positions, analyst position, entry level positions, right? Even if it's internship, right? I think first goal is that's for sure. All other things, if things are not working, it's slow, all other things you can do on the side. I mean, nobody is gonna hire you because you have FRM. Nobody is gonna hire you because you have CFA. They will ask you some questions, right? And if you answer them, if they like you, I think this is also important, right? You have a lot of similar candidates. We also have this, and then at the end, sometimes they are like very similar candidates. It's just you also be energetic during interview, right? Try to, it's how you like somebody. Like if I have 3 candidates, one looks like more personable, more approachable. So this is also, I think,
that I think you're
some
right.
match,
When I used to,
personality match with the group.
yeah, when I used to interview people, if someone was not laughing, because then problem, but was smiling, was more
More energetic, this type of things.
more energetic. It's
More personable, talks you some, give you some, more personal views, right? Not just like a robot, but say that I did this in my vacation, I did this hobby, I don't know, different hobbies, right? So these
Any
are also
other questions?
important. Yeah.
I have a question regarding like your experiences starting from Fed. Like, how do you feel about starting your career from a public sector? I know that they do hire a lot of contractors. Do you know if there are a lot of more like full-time opportunities in those public service sectors?
Yeah. So basically, to work at the Fed, I needed to have a green card, right? So a lot of government jobs will require you to have a green card, right? So that's why I was able to get this job actually. But if you can pass that, then it's very good. Working for the Fed is very valuable. FDIC, very valuable. SEC, very valuable, right? And or Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, these are also semi-government, right? A lot of jobs of the government are in, I would say, in DC or New York area, right? Definitely, and I know sometimes it's not for internship, other things, green card might not be a requirement. So, but for the Fed, I knew this green card was a requirement, right? So that's, if I didn't have green card, I wouldn't be able to get that job basically. Yeah, but it gives you, in terms of regulation, a very good idea about the industry. And in my case, risk management area, regulation area, it's the top of the world because we are regulating big banks and everybody in risk management reports to us, right? We are all ultimate authority deciding on whether their models are correct or not, or whether to give them any fines, these type of things. Right, so in the risk world, the government is or Fed, it's like semi-government, right? It's the independent. Fed is actually not government, right? But yeah, this in terms of regulation, this is top of the world. But other sectors like investment management or equity analyst, financial advice. This is probably government job is not gonna help you too much, right? Investment management, you probably want to start as an equity analyst or some sort of portfolio management type of jobs, right? So government jobs more if you want to go into risk management or regulation, helpful in those, I think, aspects, or policy research, these type of things. A lot of economists also work at the Fed, right? They are trying to measure impact of certain policies, right? During COVID, you do X or Y, and how it affects, financial markets. A lot of economists do that. So to the other question, if you do a PhD in a good university, Ivy League, for example, Fed was hiring a lot of people from, I would say, Columbia, or a lot of, I don't know, Stanford, Harvard. These guys, economic PhD from these universities, can go into banks as economists. But yeah, PhD, I would say, will take a lot of your time, right? So you might miss a lot of industry exposure. It will take you 4 or 5 years, and if you don't get into good program, if you are not working with a very good professor, publications are important, then PhD will get you more into, push you towards more academic, more teaching, academic teaching professor jobs, right? So PhD will push you into this industry more. If you want to be in corporate sector, probably PhD is questionable, basically. Masters and finding a directly job, you will improve your career faster. A lot of consulting positions, right? If you can get into Big Four or other McKinsey or other things, they also have Deloitte, Pricewaterhouse, Coopers, right? They also have a lot of risk regulation. They go into banks. So these are also very fast-paced, and if you are successful, you can improve very fast. Yep.
Any other questions? I wanted to, one final question for you. When you were in the program, did you actually have projects? Your capstone, was it a research project, or did you get to work with third party?
Let me tell you, actually, I didn't talk about it. How I also received at that time it was analytical finance, MSAF. Now you have what, financial engineering, right?
Correct.
So at that time, when I was doing my PhD, I also took some math classes, and Professor Dobrich told me, okay, why don't you take some industrial engineering classes, and I will help you also get this MSAF degree, which is the same MSFE degree. So basically, while I was doing my PhD, I also took additional classes because I was interested in financial engineering or optimization or financial calculus. So during my PhD, I also took some classes on top of what I take for PhD. Maybe I take additional 6 classes, I think 3 industrial engineering, maybe, and 2 math classes to complete this requirement. So it took me about 6 years to date my PhD, and during, I think, my 3rd and 4th years, I took some classes in, MSEF, and so I graduated in 2010 from my PhD, but MSAF, I took it in 2008. So it was actually 2 years before my PhD, I had this degree. Your question was?
Well, I guess the question is, when you did your capstone, did you
project, okay,
actually do your project? Did you do project? Was it a research project?
Yeah. So in terms of, we have Professor Thiele at that time. She was MIT PhD. We did a project to energy company there, PNC, or there was a different. There is an energy company by Lehigh Valley.
Okay.
And we did some interest rate management. They were issuing fixed rate bonds and floating rate bonds, and they were asking us what is the best way, should we issue fixed rate bonds or floating rate bond. It was like more like portfolio optimization type of question.
Was that useful when you went for your interviews?
Yeah, I would say it was useful. Not the most important project I did. I think I could do better project. if I did some, for example, more like rating modeling, my research papers actually was more helpful for my interviews. I had research paper, let's say, I had 3 research papers. One was modeling sovereign risk. I was doing something called ordered logistic model. So basically you have ratings for every country, right? AAA, AA, single A, assigned by Moody's. And I was trying to model that with some macroeconomic factors, right? Government debt, current account balance, inflation, exchange rate, right? So while I was doing this modeling, right, I learned more econometrics, more modeling. So if they can do some research with data, big data set, similar to what is done in industry. Another paper I did was this Merton model. Moody's KME has a model called Merton model. Basically, you use option pricing, Black and Scholes model to come up with probability of default. So this was also very heavy in math and financial calculus. So this type of projects, 2-3 projects, and one was time series. It was like a price discovery, whether bond market or stock market reacts faster to news. So I think these research papers that I did for my PhD was more helpful than what I did for the financial engineering project. Financial engineering project was more like optimization, but it didn't really it didn't really use too much data or too much industry practice. It was it was
we're
just very
changing
simple
that.
question. Yeah.
We're changing that in Erdem. I mean, you could see on LinkedIn, but basically all these, they're all working on different projects. And the idea also we want to do is have them on projects all year long, you know, to various degrees so that they're always practicing. And of course, developing your network is important.
Yeah, so I would say if you did 2 or 3 projects where you analyze data, you know, you build some model, that's what a lot of companies are looking for, right? They are gonna ask you, how did you build this model? What type of data did you use? Did you do outlier analysis, right? How did you control for time series effects, this type of autocorrelation? How, if you have homoscedasticity, this type of technical questions, you will have to deal when you do modeling, right? And a lot of, I would say if you have 2-3 projects like that, make sure you give some details, right? You work with this large data set, you did XYZ, right? Did you, first step, how you choose variables, univariate analysis, and then how you look at correlations between variables. Did you do outlier analysis? Did you have any violations of in modeling, and how did you fix these violations of assumptions, right? So having this type of data projects and working with some data, getting your hands dirty is valuable, and a lot of companies look for that. So if you did any data analysis, build any model with data, make sure you put this into your CV. I also see sometimes candidates just put very little information about they build a model, but they don't say what they did, right? So you want to give some details about this model, what type of data you used, I would say definitely data analysis, working with big data, programming, show that you do some programming, that these are valuable things. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any last questions? And so we could let you go. Erdem, so thank you very much for your time. I'll send you a copy of the video. We'll post that on our YouTube channel for the MFE students, so that's always a good reference for them.
Yep.
Guys,
I'm on LinkedIn. You can add me, no problem.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Keep in touch. Good luck with the job market. You will get there. Everybody gets there. No problem.
Thanks, Erdem.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So